is my last upload for January 2024, so I want to do something a little different for this new year. I love reading and I've wanted to do a top picks of books, and so I've decided to whittle it down of books that I own or have previously owned in the past. So I've read a lot of books in a lot of different categories, so I decided to whittle it down to 4 categories. This first category that I want to talk about books are 4 books that I have read, fallen in love with, and would always choose to reread over and over and over again. First book is Hatchet by Gary Paulsen. Hatchet is a 1986 Newbery Honor-winning young adult wilderness survival novel written by American writer Gary Paulsen. It is the first novel of 5 in the Hatchet series. It's specifically about this young kid, Brian. Brian Robeson is the 13-year-old son of divorced parents. As he travels from Hampton on a single-engine Cessna bush plane to visit his father in the oil fields of northern Canada for the summer, the pilot suddenly suffers a massive heart attack and dies. This is the story about Brian having to survive in the wilderness. It is a really short read, but it is a fantastic book, and I just absolutely fell in love with it the first time I've read that book, and I've reread this book several times, and I highly recommend. Second book I recommend in this category is Touching Spirit Bear. This is written by Ben Mikaelsen. Originally published in 2001, after his anger erupts into violence, Cole, in order to avoid going to prison, agrees to participate in a sentencing alternative based on the Native American circle justice, and he is sent to a remote Alaskan island where an encounter with a huge spirit bear changes his life. This gripping graphic survival story from an award-winning writer paints an unsparing picture of one violent teen and offers a poignant testimony to the power of pain that can destroy and may also heal. Third pick in this specific category is any Julie Garwood book. She was the first author that got me really interested in young adult romance kind of smut books that if you love Bridgerton, then you probably would really love Julie Garwood. I've reread all of her books several times. I've bought and sold and rebought all of her books several times. I have them also in digital versions. So these are books that they're my go-tos. I love reading them. They're timeless classic stories of love, romance, and kind of heroic. She does have some murder mystery, like solving crime sort of ones too, the like newer age Buchanan family line. So really recommend all of her books. And then a fourth and last pick in this specific category is the book East. East is a 2003 novel by the author Edith Pattou. It is an adaptation of an old Norwegian folktale entitled East of the Sun and West of the Moon, and was a 2003 ALA Top 10 Best Book for Young Adults. This book is a crazy story. It's not too big of a book to read. I really recommend that book. It's a great classic tale of kind of like a, princess on a journey, and there's unknown traps and things that she has to go through, and it's a really good story. Next category that I want to actually highlight in books that I own or have owned is like dark books or horror books. Those kind of books, they are a huge part of like my reading material, so I definitely want to highlight those kind of books, that style. So first book in this category is Black House by Stephen King. I actually desperately searched for this book in Idaho Falls, Idaho, trying to get a copy of this. It was actually very difficult, but I was successful after a year's worth of search trying to find this specific book. It's not a well-known Stephen King book, and I'll be honest, I haven't read a lot of Stephen King books, but this one is one of the rare Stephen King books that I've read. It is trippy, it's far out there. It's one that I recommend that you should read more than once because so much happens in that book that you kind of miss the story of this kid going through kind of this black house, and actually it's more than a black house, Stephen King and his writing. It's just really interesting, so I really recommend that book. Second book in this specific category is Perfume by Patrick Suskind, a very far out there idea of of there's this guy that he's a little kind of crazy and he loves perfume, but he wants to make the perfect perfume, and it involves some craziness. At the end, it kind of just spins out of control. There is a movie called Perfume, and it does follow the book pretty par on par, so really recommend if you've never read that book. It's tiny and it's a fast read. It's fantastic though, really recommend. Third book in this specific category is another book by Patrick Suskind, Pigeon. It's another kind of book. It's kind of weird. You're reading it trying to, understand the story. It's very short, but it's about this guy who he works to try to own his apartment, and there's a pigeon, and that's all I'm gonna say. So I really recommend just go read that book. And then fourth and last book in this specific category is The Lord of Flies. Lord of the Flies is a 1954 novel by the Nobel laureate British author William Golding. The plot concerns a group of British boys who are stranded on an uninhabited island and their disastrous attempts to govern themselves. This is a very interesting read. I had to read this in class, and I read it in one whole day. It was phenomenal. Really recommend. It's a little dark, it's a little weird. Really recommend that book. Go read that. Third category that I want to talk about books is thought-provoking that were, for me specifically, they just left deep impressions. I would really like to recommend those books because they left such a deep impression on me personally. First book in this specific category of thought-provoking for me is Night by Elie Wiesel. This is a recounting memorial style of book, not necessarily autobiographical. It's not his entire life from what I understand, but it's specifically about him going through the Holocaust. He was a survivor from Auschwitz prison camp. His story recounting of what he experienced, him and his family, those that survived and those that did not, and just the horror that happened in the concentration camps, and just that whole entire situation happening. It leaves an impression on you when you read it, so I just really recommend that book. Second book that was really thought-provoking, left an impression on me, is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. This is actually, I would say, one of my top favorite books. I feel like it's one of those very classic books that maybe a lot of people don't, I don't know, I don't feel like people I hear say that they, love Charles Dickens, or that this is like one of their favorite books, or this is an amazing story that they've ever read. But I don't know, there's something about this story that when I read it the first time when I was really young, I read it and then I read it again and then I read it again. Within 3 or 4 days span, I read this book multiple times. It left an impression upon me, this young kid's story of growing up and then having someone there to kind of be your mentor, and then how life never goes the way that you expect it, and how you have these great expectations, but at the end of the day, what actually happens, it's kind of a letdown. And there's just something that's so impressionable about this story that I just really recommend that book. Third book in this specific category is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffeneger. Published in 2003, it is a love story about Henry, a man with a genetic disorder that causes him to time travel unpredictably, and about Claire, his wife, an artist who has to cope with his frequent absences. This book is... man, I was probably a little bit too young, to be honest, to be reading this book at the time that I read it, but I saw the spine, and the picture copy that I have is of the boots sitting on top of the folded clothes out in the meadow, and the seafoam color green of the spine in that picture just really stuck out, where it left an impression, just the cover alone, where I was like, I have to read the story. I read the first page and I immediately bought the book and I took it home. I read it and bawled my eyes out. It's a really good book. There is a movie that's made based off the book as well, although I'm gonna be honest, I feel like they could have done a little bit better with the characters, and they missed a lot of some subplots of things that were really heart-wrenching in the book. That I really recommend the book. It does kind of hurt you inside, but it just leaves an impression. I really recommend that book. And last pick for this specific category, this is a series. It's called The Edge Chronicles. The Edge Chronicles is a children's fantasy novel series written by Paul Stewart and Chris Riddell. It consists of 4 trilogies plus 4 additional books and other books related to the universe called The Edge. The stories of The Edge Chronicles take place in the fictional world of The Edge, a vast cliff with no apparent bottom. The majority of books are grouped into sagas, with each saga focusing on one character. And honestly, that's what I love about these books specifically, is that you follow one specific character at the beginning and you move into like the next character and they actually happen to be related. It's someone that's actually in the family lineage and it picks up their saga and it tells their story in the world The Edge and kind of what they're going on. I love the creativity that both Paul Stewart and Chris Riddell came up with of the technology that they're able to use. They're floating sky pirates basically in these like really cool ships where the rocks themselves actually emit a signal where you can actually float. The rocks float, so they actually capture these rocks and create ships, and then these crews go out and they, you know, fly out into the air and stuff like that because there's just this edge of nothingness. So they float out over it. There's a floating city. It's crazy, but I really recommend this series overall, The Edge Chronicles. It really left an impression on me. And then last category that I want to talk about books is foundation books for me. These ones were like, they created my identity. They were huge, impactful books for me. So let's go through those last 4 books. First book in this category that I want to talk about is the Bible, Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth. This book tells incredible stories. I really recommend, if you have not read the Bible, please read the New Testament first. Read that in its entirety and then go back and read the Old Testament. And then after you've read the entire book, if you want to start from the beginning through the Old Testament to the New Testament, you more than likely, yes, you will be fine to go ahead and do so. Just want to preface that when you read the Bible, when you start in the Old Testament, there are those verses that call attention to the kind of shroud that you can be facing against as you're reading the Old Testament. You just feel very held to the laws, very, very hard. And so just keep one of your eyes on Christ the entire time that you're going through the Old Testament is what I would recommend. It is a difficult book to read, but I really recommend that you do at least read the Bible once in your life. At least once. I recommend that you do read the Bible every day. It is your daily bread. It's your manna. It's your word from God. And so you need to read that every day. But this is such a foundation identity building book. It gives you encouragement. It can help uplift you. It can help carry you forward. It can give you answers to struggles that you have in your life. It has great advice. There's beautiful love stories. There are amazing fight scenes. Like, it's an amazing book overall. So if there's any kind of genre of specific book, like it's got it all for you. So I really recommend the Bible. Second book that's an identity foundation book for me is Anatomy of the Spirit. This is the 7 stages of power and healing by Caroline Myss, talking about the body in structural form and then also in spiritual form and also like nervous system form. So this is all parts of the body, all levels of our body, and how she's able to actually recommend healing. And if you have a lot of physical health problems or some cancers and stuff, the Anatomy of the Spirit book, that was so helpful to me, that when you are having like extended spiritual issues in your energy force of your body, amazing read, really, really helpful, and huge identity and foundation book for me in my journey. Third book in this specific category is The 4 Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. These are 4 specific agreements that he was taught by a spiritual healer, leader, tribe person that he then is giving to the rest of the world. It's a really short, small book. I feel like these are basic building blocks, identity foundation things to at least understand and maybe come to some sort of agreement for yourself personally to maybe live by these rules, these agreements. They are super impactful and helpful. I found them very super impactful and helpful. So that was a foundation book for me for sure. And then fourth and final book in Identity Foundation books is A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. This book was during my Oprah days of I would come home after school and come and watch Oprah. And she had Eckhart Tolle. He's a German spiritual kind of person, talk kind of person. He wrote several books, but the specific book that he decided to do a publicity tour on, A New Earth, and he went and did a show on Oprah to promote his book. These things that he was talking about, they were so profound to me. I'm gonna be honest, they're pretty similar to the Four Agreements. And a lot of these things kind of tie to a lot of the basic instructions that are in the Bible. So it's not like these things are new or original thoughts, is what I'm going to say. A lot of other people have talked about these topics before, but I just personally really like how Eckhart Tolle, he laid it out in his book. It's another very small book. It doesn't take very long to read, but just the way that he breaks it down, the way that he describes the thought processes and how there's kind of this healthy detachment that you can have to the world and to other people and to materialistic things. A New Earth, his idea that he has about that, it was just really impactful for me. And so those are all my top picks of books that I currently own or have at least owned in the past before. So let me know if you guys have read any of those books. What are your impressions? Let me know down in the comment section. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Remember, I love every single one of you. I hope that you have a great day. Remember to spread kindness to yourself and to others, and I'll see you guys in my next video.